Vladimir Putin once believed that by controlling energy supplies, he could force the West to kneel. He saw Russia's economic strength as the ultimate weapon to bring down global powers. He proclaimed loudly that Germany had been trapped in recession for 3 years. After all, they had abandoned Russian energy sources. But recent reports tell a different story. Now, internal data from the Kremlin casts doubt on these bold claims. The nation's largest energy company, Rosneft, has reported a staggering 70.1% plunge in profits attributable to shareholders. This isn't just a numbers game, this decline threatens the entire foundation of Russia's economy. Rosneft doesn't merely fill government coffers. It funds loyalty networks for Putin, enriches oligarchs, supports security agencies, and sustains foreign operations, all dependent on the petrodollar system that fuels Russia's power. If just one link in this chain snaps, the entire system risks collapse. And signs of fragility are everywhere. In November 2025, Russia's oil and gas revenues are projected to fall by 35% compared to last year. This isn't just economic decline, it's an existential threat to Putin's regime. Amid this chaos, he's preparing to travel to India on December 4th and 5th, seeking a lifeline in a world that's slipping from his grasp. Isolated by the war in Ukraine, Putin views New Delhi as the last hope for survival. Let's step back and examine what's truly happening. The collapse of Rosneft's profits, by a shocking 70%, resonates far beyond Moscow's high-rise offices. It exemplifies Russia's model of state-controlled capitalism. Operating as a state within a state. This company is the backbone of roughly a quarter of the national budget. Its failure isn't just financial, it's strategic. Rosneft's revenues are used as a clandestine fund for covert operations, secret missions kept hidden from the public eye in parliament. Financial resources flow through complex networks, supporting mercenaries in Africa, financing political meddling in Europe, and manipulating media outlets. When Rosneft's cash flow dwindles, Putin's leverage on the global stage diminishes. This isn't just about money, it's about loyalty. Key elites are tied to this machine. Their wealth is connected to tenders, subcontract reliefs, and positions on boards. Sanctions against Rosneft threaten to explode this loyalty network. Betrayal and mutiny become possible, shaking the regime's stability to its core. At the heart of this power structure lies Igor Sechin, often called Darth Vader or Cardinal Richelieu in Russia. He's more than a CEO, he's the unofficial kingpin of the Siloviki faction. With roots steeped in Soviet intelligence, he forged Putin's security system and orchestrated the takeover of Yukos in the early 2000s. That move, turning private assets into state-controlled wealth, cemented the Kremlin's grip on economic power. Attacking Rosneft publicly becomes a direct assault on Russia's deep state. It threatens the fragile balance Putin maintains among competing centers of influence. Recent estimates show that Russia's oil and gas earnings in November plummeted to roughly 520 billion rubles, a heavy blow to Putin's war effort. The extractive industries that fund his military campaigns are drying up. Adding fuel to the fire, Rosneft's own statement confirms the heavy toll. They attribute declining refinery outputs to scheduled repairs, yet behind this diplomatic language lies a grim reality. Ukrainian drones and sabotage operations have systematically attacked Russia's oil infrastructure. While Ukraine blocks fuel deliveries to frontline forces, it's also crippling Russia's domestic refinery system. This sabotage has forced Rosneft into perpetual repairs, constant expenses amid falling income. As revenues collapse, the regime's desperation grows. To sustain the war, Moscow must borrow domestically, pushing up interest rates and risking economic paralysis. Borrowing at such high costs drains public funds and stifles economic growth, threatening the regime's very survival. Meanwhile, the costs of bolstering internal security, counter-terror measures and anti-sabotage efforts continue to rise. The security costs reveal a home front nearing collapse. The nation's leaders are forced into a brutal choice: sacrifice social programs or escalate military spending. Either path could trigger a financial implosion, unraveling the narrative of Putin's invincibility. Behind this mounting disaster lie three destructive forces. First, oil prices have collapsed under the weight of heavy discounts. Russia's flagship Urals crude is now trading at about 23% below Brent crude, its lowest in years. Sanctions tighten, and the once mighty weapon of economic leverage loses potency. Second, the strengthening of the ruble currency has backfired. Russia earns revenues in dollars, but these are converted into rubles, whose value fluctuates wildly. This currency mismatch means that when the ruble strengthens, the value of export earnings diminishes in domestic terms. The power of Russia's primary revenue stream is being systematically chipped away. Third, the regime's own borrowing costs have soared, driven by high interest rates and the need to finance internal chaos. The security upgrade costs confirm how Ukraine's covert strikes and sabotage are undermining Russia from within. Despite increasing expenditures, revenues collapse, forming a perfect storm. Compounding these crises, Putin's reliance on natural gas as a geoeconomic weapon has been shattered. For years, he tried to freeze Europe into submission, wielding energy as a weapon of political coercion. But now, U.S. liquefied natural gas shipments to Europe have surged 40%, flooding the continent. Gas prices have halved, and dependency on Russian energy evaporates. Europe has stockpiled record levels of natural gas, rendering Putin's tactics obsolete. His winter weapon, cutting off gas supplies, no longer holds sway. This economic victory for the West hits Putin where it hurts most, eroding his influence on the continent. Amidst this chaos, Putin is heading to India, his first visit since 2021. But there's no display of strength, it's a sign of desperation. The global landscape shifts, and his dependence on allies like India becomes painfully obvious. While the world moves on, Putin's diminishing power becomes clearer. The colossal failure of his economic strategies paints a stark picture. The prophet of energy dominance is facing an inevitable retreat. A collapsing petrodollar system, plummeting revenues, and strategic defeats are rewriting the story of Russia's future. What will happen when the funds vanish? Will the regime survive, or will this be the final chapter of Putin's grand gamble? Following the collapse of Rosneft, nearly a quarter of Russia's total budget revenues have evaporated, vanishing into the shadows. But the company's role extends far beyond balancing books. Rosneft functions as a covert fund for secret operations the Kremlin keeps hidden from the public eye. These activities include financing mercenary groups in Africa, supporting political factions across Europe, and secretly manipulating media narratives. When Rosneft's cash flow halts, Putin's global influence strategy stumbles. This company is the heartbeat of Putin's loyalty network. Through government tenders, subcontractor deals, and elite board positions, those loyal to the regime gain wealth and power. Sanctions hit this system hard, threatening betrayal and mutiny among the ranks. At the core of this clandestine machinery is Igor Sechin, often called Darth Vader or Cardinal Richelieu in Russia. He's not just a CEO, he's the unofficial master of the Siloviki faction. Their bond with Putin stems from shared Soviet intelligence roots. Sechin masterminded the takeover of Yukos, Mikhail Khodorkovsky's former oil empire, in the early 2000s. That move cemented Kremlin dominance over private property, confirming that in Russia, the state rules supreme. Now, targeting Rosneft financially is seen as striking at the heart of Russia's deep power structures. It threatens the fragile balance Putin maintains among his loyal groups. Analysts estimate that Russia's oil and gas revenues for November could plunge to around 520 billion rubles. The lifeline for Putin's war efforts is rapidly shrinking. An even more disturbing sign comes from Rosneft's own report. It hints at the destruction of Ukraine's logistics strategy on Russia's home front. Officially, the decline in refining volumes is blamed on refinery repairs and load management. But behind this diplomatic language lies a harsh truth. Ukraine has launched relentless drone attacks and sabotage operations, crippling Russia's domestic refineries as never before. This means the very backbone of Russia's fuel supply has been targeted, leaving Rosneft scrambling to repair the damage while revenues collapse. What secrets lie behind this destabilization of Russia's oil empire? Will Putin's reliance on clandestine networks and loyalty exchanges finally unravel? The answer looms amid crumbling finances and shattered strategic illusions, a reckoning that could reshape the global energy landscape forever. Russia's economic stability is trembling, and the picture becomes darker with each passing day. Recent reports from Rosneft reveal the harsh truth: Ukraine's relentless sabotage has shattered Russia's fuel supply infrastructure. The official story points to repairs and loading adjustments. But behind this diplomatic facade lies a brutal reality: systematic Ukrainian drone attacks and covert sabotage are decimating Russia's oil refineries. The backbone of Russia's domestic fuel industry is crippled, forcing Rosneft into endless repairs, ballooning costs, and crippling delays. While the company's spending has surged 6%, its revenues have tanked, forcing the government to adopt risky, expensive tactics to fund the war effort. The nation's reserves? They're running low. Russia's leaders find themselves cornered, drowning in mounting debt, compelled to borrow more within its borders. Every ruble borrowed chips away at economic stability. It's no longer a question of choice, hard decisions loom. Will they slash social programs or cut defense spending? The country's financial system teeters on the edge of collapse, with the very regime's survival hanging in the balance. The surge in security and counterterrorism costs paints a stark picture: the home front is unraveling. Security expenses soar as threats seep closer, from Belgorod to Moscow. The government's efforts to keep its citizens safe are failing, and with revenues plummeting, the capacity to sustain these costs diminishes even further. Growing unrest, economic tumult, the threat of civil disorder, these are all converging. Could this be the moment when the whole facade crumbles? The future remains uncertain, but the cracks are unmistakable, and the question is, how much longer can the Kremlin hold, before the entire system collapses under its own weight? The crisis engulfing Russia is not caused by a single event, but by the simultaneous explosion of three devastating economic weapons. What hidden forces are tearing apart the superpower from within? Let's delve into the shocking details behind this collapse, as the very foundations of Russia's economy are collapsing beneath its feet. The first blow struck with brutal force came from the world of oil prices. Russia's flagship exports, specific crude oils, began trading at unprecedented discounts. Experts report that in November, this premiumless Urals crude traded at nearly 23% below Brent crude, the global standard. Imagine the sound of sliding prices, the sharp clink of value slipping through the cracks of sanctions and market restrictions. Some shipments plummeted to just $30 per barrel, the lowest since the deep crash of 2022. Russia continues to pump oil, but it now faces a new reality, operating with significantly less influence in global markets. This was supposed to be Putin's strongest weapon, yet it's now guided by a targeted economic shell. How long can the country survive when its most powerful tool is being systematically sabotaged? But the shocks didn't stop there. The second wave hit with an ironic twist. Russia's own currency, the ruble, was both a weapon and a trap. Normally, oil exports in dollars generate substantial income. Yet, due to the rising strength of the ruble, each dollar earned now converted into fewer rubles. This currency mismatch means that the more dollars Russia gets, the less value they hold on domestic shores. Picture the crunching of economic gears, each dollar's value shrinking right in front of your eyes. This double whammy shrank Rosneft's profits sharply, undermining government revenues and choking the flow of funds for critical national projects. How can a superpower defend itself when its money weakens just as it tries to earn more? Then came the third shock, a blow from within. Russia's own regime, trying to finance its ongoing chaos, escalated costs on all fronts. High interest rates imposed by the central bank created a financial barrier that few could cross. Meanwhile, increased security measures, labeled as counterterrorism, were actually a reflection of internal instability. The sounds of rising security expenses echo like distant rumbling, signaling the regime's sinking grip. Despite these mounting costs, Rosneft doubled its spending on future production, desperate to keep the engine running. But the more it spends, the more fragile the entire system becomes. Could internal unrest finally push Russia over the edge? Or is there an even darker twist hiding in the shadows of this collapse? As Russia's financial resources shrink, the cracks in Putin's empire become impossible to ignore. Hidden beneath the surface of the Kremlin's power machine, internal chaos is fueling a dangerous, self-destructive cycle. High interest rates and escalating security costs are choking the economy from within, turning once loyal industries into battlegrounds of survival. Rosneft, Russia's flagship oil company, is caught in this storm. The state giant faces a staggering 70% decline in profits, a blow that's felt far beyond corporate offices, shaking the very foundation of Moscow's financial stability. This collapse isn't just about numbers, it's about the bloodline of Putin's regime. Rosneft's revenues fund secret operations, support mercenaries in distant lands, and keep the loyalty of elites loyal. Now, with sanctions striking at its core, the entire structure of influence teeters on the brink. Behind the scenes, a figure emerges, Igor Sechin, often called by insiders the shadow master of Russia's hidden state. With roots in Soviet intelligence, he's the architect of the Kremlin's dark machinery. His hands shaped the takeover of Yukos, turning private riches into state assets. An attack on Rosneft now is more than financial, it's a direct assault on this shadowy inner circle. The threat of betrayal grows louder, the loyalty ties weakening as revenues shrink. Meanwhile, the economic assault deepens. November's forecast projects oil and gas earnings plummeting by over 35%. This spells trouble for Putin's war effort, which relies heavily on energy sales. The once predictable flow of cash is drying up, cutting off vital funds. Refineries are under attack, the infrastructure damaged by Ukrainian drones, costs soar even as revenues collapse. Rosneft spends more to repair its facilities, desperate to keep production alive, yet the downward spiral accelerates. Adding fuel to the fire, global market shifts threaten Putin's most potent weapon, natural gas. His plan to freeze Europe into submission failed spectacularly. Thanks to record U.S. liquefied natural gas shipments, up by 40% in just 1 month, Europe's gas reserves now surpass previous year's totals. Prices have halved since February, leaving Putin's winter strategy in ruins. His leverage evaporates as Europe's dependency breaks away like ice melting under the sun. In response, Putin journeys to India, seeking new allies amid a crumbling edifice of influence. But his visit is not a show of strength, it's a sign of desperation. While the world pivots away, the very foundation of his power unravels. The question hangs in the air, can he stem this tide before the entire system collapses beneath him? Or is this the end of an empire built on oil, gas, and illusions of dominance? The rapid decline in gas prices across Europe has slammed Russia's ability to earn from liquefied natural gas and pipeline exports. The nation is losing its most lucrative economic front, even as financial and geopolitical pressures tighten. Amid this crisis, Vladimir Putin makes a rare trip to India, the first since 2021. But this visit reveals more about desperation than strength. While the world shuns Russia over the Ukraine conflict, India stands as its last financial ally. Despite global pushback, India continues to buy Russian oil, becoming Russia's largest crude importer. This choice isn't accidental, it's strategic. Cheap Russian oil keeps prices low for Indian families, curbing inflation. It allows India to sustain its growth, providing affordable fuel and staple foods. But for Putin, this is a bitter pill. Selling oil at a 23% discount drains Russia's budget. Instead of strengthening his people, he's fueling dependence on a single, unpredictable partner. What does this mean for the average Russian family? It's devastating. Basic essentials are becoming increasingly scarce. Consumption of milk and dairy has dropped by 8%, rice purchase down by 10%. These aren't luxury items, they're essentials. This isn't a sign of prosperity but of hardship. Putin's once tacit agreement with his citizens, economic stability in exchange for political silence, is shattering. Now, with food shortages and empty shelves, the foundation of his rule cracks wide open. As Putin's influence wanes, the cracks in the system grow deeper. The economy, once powered by natural gas and oil, is in free fall. Revenue from these resources has plummeted, and with it, the livelihood of millions. The people are feeling it firsthand. And behind the scenes, the global shift continues. The once massive financial lifeline is unraveling faster than anyone expected. The future of Putin's regime now hangs by a fragile thread. How far will this collapse go? And what will happen when the unthinkable finally hits? The most alarming truth now unfolding in Russia is something few expected: people are starting to go hungry. Basic necessities like milk and rice are vanishing from supermarket shelves, with consumption dropping by 8% and 10% respectively. This isn't a sign of luxury slashing, it's deprivation at its core. When families can't afford their most fundamental food, it signals a deep crisis. Imagine a mother unable to give her child enough milk, or a family forced to skip meals. Inflation isn't just a buzzword anymore, it's a harsh reality hitting home. The Russian populace is waking up to the fact that Putin's promises of stability are hollow. While propaganda claims everything's fine, real people see the truth in the label prices. Their children's milk is the price paid for a war they didn't choose. Now, even Putin's loyal supporters face hardship. Workers in factories and public service employees tremble at the thought of layoffs. How long can they sustain the illusion of stability? The collapse of Rosneft's profits by 70% and the loss of 35% of federal energy income are crushing the foundation that funds Putin's war efforts. Once reliable sources of national revenue are evaporating, leaving the entire system teetering on the brink of collapse. High interest rates, a strengthening ruble, and a collapsing discount on Russian oil have drained the country's coffers. As Russian oil profits dwindle, Vladimir Putin's key weapon, economic dominance, is fading fast. The global energy market shifted irreversibly against him. The United States' decision to increase shipments of liquefied natural gas to Europe by 40% has flooded the continent, silencing Russia's political leverage over energy. Faced with these defeats, Putin turns to a surprising move: dependence on India. His failure to hold on to Europe and the West has forced him into an awkward alliance. He is sacrificing his own country's economic independence to forge new ties with a distant partner. The question remains: can Putin cling to power as his core support crumbles, or will these systemic shocks push Russia into chaos? The answer hangs in the balance, an unpredictable storm that could reshape the world's largest nation forever. Vladimir Putin once believed that energy dominance would bring the West to its knees. He saw Russia's economic strength as a weapon powerful enough to cause the collapse of Western economies. And so, he launched a relentless campaign to wield this weapon, cutting off gas supplies, flooding markets with cheap oil, and asserting control through his petrodollar system. But what if I told you that his plan is crumbling right before his eyes? Imagine the deafening silence of empty supermarket shelves. The smell of stifling fear and failure echo through the corridors of power. Oil revenues have plummeted by over 70%. Meanwhile, Europe's gas prices have fallen by nearly half thanks to an unexpected boost in shipments from the United States. Putin's once indomitable energy weapon is now neutralized. The question is, can he adapt, or is this the beginning of his downfall? Now, Russia faces a severe crisis. Its main source of income, oil and gas, is drying up. Rosneft, the giant oil company symbolizing Moscow's economic model, suffered a 70% profit decrease. This isn't just a numbers game, it's a collapse of influence. Without revenues, Putin's ability to fund covert operations, manipulate markets, or buy loyalty is slipping away. His vast network of elites, loyal through political favors and lucrative tenders, begins to tremble. If one link breaks, the entire chain risks collapsing. Behind the scenes, a shadow figure, often called the Dark Prince, commands from the shadows. This figure, confidant to Putin, orchestrated the takeover of private firms like Yukos in the early days. Their control is so tight that attacking Rosneft is like attacking the heart of the regime itself. Any sanctions against it threaten to unleash mutiny among the oligarchs and security agencies. The financial blow hits hardest in the Kremlin's war machine. Oil prices have been slashed by over 23%, with some shipments plunging to $30 per barrel, the lowest since 2022. Meanwhile, the strong ruble, instead of boosting revenues, worsens the situation by converting dollar earnings into fewer rubles. This currency mismatch cripples Rosneft's profits and decimates Russia's budget, threatening the very stability that Putin has relied upon. In an ironic twist, the regime is now forced to spend more on domestic security as it fights the flames of sabotage and drone attacks. The cost of counterterrorism measures skyrockets, revealing cracks in the empire's facade. Meanwhile, consuming fewer essentials, milk, rice, basic foods, Russians face a stark reality: deprivation, not prosperity. Their hunger echoes louder than any propaganda broadcast. As the financial strain grows, Putin's options shrink. To keep the economy afloat, he's forced to borrow domestically, pushing the entire system toward collapse. Social unrest bubbles beneath the surface, threatening to erupt. Meanwhile, his once weaponized gas supplies to Europe have been effectively shut down. The biggest geopolitical tool in his arsenal is gone. The United States' surge in liquefied natural gas shipments has flooded European markets, driving prices down and ending Putin's influence over the continent's energy policies. Now, Putin's reliance on India is a desperate move. While millions in Russia go hungry, India benefits from discounted Russian oil, keeping fuel prices low and inflation in check. The betrayal is clear. Instead of solving his domestic crisis, Putin sacrifices his own people's welfare to sustain his global influence. His empire shows signs of fracture, his power waning with each passing day. He stands at a crossroads, every step he takes risks alienating his core supporters. State workers, military personnel, and industrial sectors tremble under the weight of economic turmoil. Even giants like Russia's railway system report losses. The promises of stability have been shattered, replaced by uncertainty and fear. As his empire crumbles, a haunting question remains: can Putin cling to power, or will this be the beginning of his downfall? The deep-rooted dependence on energy exports, once seen as a shield, now acts as a deadly chain. With revenues collapsing and internal security costs soaring, the regime's future hangs in balance. The silent weapon, energy, has turned into its own destroyer. The world watches as Russia's influence erodes, leaving behind a nation struggling beneath the weight of its leaders' failures. Remember, while Putin mocks Western recession, he cannot silence the cries of hunger echoing from Russian homes. The sound of empty pots and broken promises may be the loudest message of all. As Russia's coffers dry up and trust diminishes, only one question remains: is this the start of Putin's end?